Take a little walk to the edge of town and go across the track where the viaduct...
Actually, while I think about it, can I make a comment on the first caller and what you guys were talking about before?
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember you were saying something I thought was totally justified and correct. I'm a Christian, but the reason I'm a Christian apologist even. But the reason that I believe in Christianity is different from the evidence that I believe is valid. I'm probably a Christian because I was raised in a Christian home and because I was raised in church,
right.
And probably because of emotional things. But there was a time in my life when I was in high school that I kind of realized that I was believing based on complete blind faith.
Mm-hmm.
I was accepting whatever my pastor told me, and that was okay with me. And then all of a sudden I realized that that's not okay with me. And so then I kind of sought out a reason for what I was believing. I kind of went on a quest to decide, is what I'm believing actually right? And if it is, then I should probably take it more seriously than I am. And if it isn't, then I just need to abandon it altogether. And through the evidence that I've encountered, through the works of apologetics like William Lane Craig or et cetera, I've come to believe since then that there is legitimate reasons to believe. There are legitimate reasons to believe that Christianity is valid. But the reason I guess I still believe, technically, is because I was raised as a Christian.
Your story mirrors my own to quite a great degree. I was raised. I walked down the aisle at a revival at the age of 5. And of course, when I became a teenager, I began to understand what Christianity was all about, and what the Southern Baptist beliefs were all about. And I realized, oh my gosh, if I'm only beginning to grasp this now, then clearly I wasn't saved when I was 5. How could I possibly have an understanding of this? So then there's the get saved again or rededicate, and this would happen a couple times. And then one day, it was, well, why, do I really have any evidence for this? Why do I believe what I believe, etc.? And I began investigating, and I read like Josh McDowell's Evidence to Advance a Verdict, by the way. That settled it. I mean, seriously, you read through that, and as long as you don't go beyond that, it is probably one of the most reaffirming things you'll ever read. And if you want to read an impassioned plea for Christianity that doesn't delve into evidence or philosophy too much, you've got guys like C.S. Lewis. And that is really good for reinforcing their beliefs. What happened was, I came across some people who launched specific objections to those. And I thought about that, and I studied, and it was a period of years that this occurred. But you reach a point, or I reached a point, to be fair, where all of a sudden I started to realize that what's happening is apologist A makes some historical claim or some philosophical argument, and non-theist X offers their objections to it, their criticisms, their reasons for rejecting it, and there is no valid response from the apologists. The objections and criticisms stand. And from that, I tended to go a step further, which was, let's take a step back and analyze this question from I hate to use words like this, but from a more meta perspective. Let's go back and find out, is there a God? What kind of God could there be? Is there any reason to suppose this thing exists in the first place? But I didn't just do all this in a vacuum. I was still a sincere, devout Christian. Granted, I was, depending on what particular religion you were raised in, there are a number of different words for it. I was tremendously backslidden. I was leading a largely secular life for a number of years towards the end of my time in the Navy. But there was a serious period where my intent was to reaffirm my faith and get the answers that I needed in order to be a better witness for Christ and win more souls, if that's what God wanted me to do, if God wanted me to be a preacher, whatever. So during this entire investigation, it wasn't just an intellectual pursuit where I said, yeah, boy, they really trumped the theist there. Pascal's wager is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It took me a while to realize that Pascal's wager is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But this was all done with the goal of being a better Christian in, not constant, I mean, I did eat and sleep, but continual prayer and Bible study and appeals to God. Now, maybe, maybe there is a God. Maybe the Christian God is real, and he just decided that he didn't have any use for me. Or maybe I wasn't as sincere as I thought I was, although I can't possibly imagine me being any more sincere about anything. No answers came, and I didn't just stop believing in God because I wasn't hearing anything. It was not only did no answers come from God, no answers came from anywhere else. These objections still stand. There is not a single philosophical argument for the existence of God that is both valid and sound. Not one.
I mean, I would disagree with you on that, but I mean that's a completely separate issue. I mean, I think in many cases, I think that whole story is valid, and I'm sure it's completely true. But I mean, I think it's one thing to say that no answers came from anyone else. I think there certainly are answers, and the question is not whether they are answers, but whether they are good or bad answers.
And clearly, they must have been bad answers. If
sure, there were no good answers.
As you assess them by your own methodology. I mean, I think that there are certainly a lot of bad answers available, but there are certainly some good and true answers.
Like
in the list of things that you think are very good and strong philosophical responses that are persuasive,
that are accurate, that are sound.
I mean, just pick one,
and you don't have to do it. I mean, you can call back or you can email, whatever. I'm seriously, I don't mean to be putting you on the spot. You're a nice guy. We've had a great conversation.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you can identify a fallacy or a non-demonstrated premise, that there is some premise there that is not demonstrated to be true. And what that does to the argument is it renders it unsound because the premise has not been demonstrated. Mm-hmm. Now, if from coming from the standpoint of a believer, the arguments appear to be sound. I mean, when you see, like, granted, almost nobody sees or understands Plantinga's modal logic version of the ontological, but it's that type of thing where, by the way, that drives me crazy because almost nobody understands it, and yet I keep hearing about it. Nobody was convinced.
I'm not sure what I think about the ontological argument. I've never really been too much of a fan. I don't usually use it in a debate whenever I do have them.
So is there anything apart from your personal testimony, your own experience, that you would use to convince somebody that a God exists, any God, or yours specifically? I mean, what would be the first, plan of attack in that conversation?
If I was trying to convince someone of the existence of God, I wouldn't refer to my own personal experience or to anyone else's personal experience, most likely. I would probably, an argument that I tend to use a lot is the Kalam cosmological argument.
The Kalam is one of those that I think suffers from a faulty, unsupported premise, which is some of the premises of Kalam. Kalam essentially starts with everything that begins to exist has a cause, and then it goes to the universe began to exist, therefore the universe had a cause. Well, that's where it runs into a problem. We don't actually know anything about the ultimate origin of the universe. We do not know that the universe began
at all
to exist. But that's a premise of the Kalam argument. So essentially, because it assumes something in its premise, in its very premise, that has not in fact been established as incontrovertibly true, then the argument kind of crumbles right there. But do call back and then also write us through email and participate with us on the blog, because you have been the ideal theist caller that we love to talk to, and we appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys taking my call so much.
Sure.
Oh, definitely, thank you.
No kidding, call back in and we can hash out some other stuff, Patrick. Thanks a lot.
You take care, all right, bud? Have a good day.
You too.
I'd have said God bless, but somebody would have chuckled, and it was being nice.
No, he was an excellent caller, and we really do appreciate this. So that's one of the calls that makes the Atheist Experience what it is.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
And we'll have to do Kalam again with him later. I completely agree. The undemonstrated premises in there is the universe began to exist. That's not necessarily true, and it's a bit of wordplay in the sense of what you mean by universe. Do you mean the universe in its current state, the point from the Big Bang onward, or everything that was there, the singularity, etc.? Yeah. It's way too much to go into, and it's not fair to do it now.
Walk to the edge of town and go across the track where the viaduct